Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Make Life Less Taxing podcast, the show where we uncover what really creates freedom in life and business, and we'll explore stories of those who've learned how to build wealth with purpose.
Welcome back to the Make Life Less Taxing podcast. Today, I'm joined by Wulf Trigo, founder of Sovereign Assets, a firm on a mission to help high-income professionals and business owners break free from financial ceilings and build true foundation for freedom. His work bridges infinite banking, tax strategy, and creative financial structures in a way that empowers clients to think and act like a private family office. Wulf, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Daniel. I appreciate the introduction and the opportunity to be on the podcast.
Awesome. Well, great to have you on. Well, can you expand on a little bit on that? Share a little bit more about who you are and what is the work that you do.
Absolutely. So I've been in the finance space for now about a decade. So a lot of the stuff that I've put together from our company or as a company has been mainly geared towards looking at what the wealthy are doing, more specifically family offices. And the reason why is because you look at a family office as essentially like a big wealth management firm that works for one family. So there's a huge gap between a traditional financial advisor and a family office. Usually, once you've reached a net worth of like 5 million or so, you've basically outgrown the average financial advisor. And then the next step to get to the level of family office, you have to be about 50 million in investable assets. So there's a huge gap there. Now, we can learn a lot of things from big family offices and the wealthy individuals out there if we just look at the strategies that they're utilizing. And most often than not, Daniel, you'll realize, and most people will realize, that the strategies that they're using, some of them are available to the general public. The only difference is that they're doing it at a much, much larger scale. What I mean by that is family offices still invest into businesses through M&A and private equity, right? And you and I can go out there and find a business broker on Biz Buy Sell and go buy a business, and that's considered M&A. And the same thing goes for smaller private equity opportunities that might be available with smaller funds and local investor groups, syndications, etc. That stuff is available to us. The same thing goes for tax planning. Most people think that in order to not pay taxes like Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos or Donald Trump, that you have to be worth billions of dollars. However, the deeper you dive into it, if you do a little bit of research with the right tax planning team, you'll realize that there's certain strategies that you can use. For example, one of the strategies that we use has to do with with tiny homes, utilizing bonus depreciation that gives our clients a 1-to-5 leverage, meaning that if they contribute, for example, 100,000 towards one of these strategies, they get a $500,000 leverage on their taxes, which means that they can reduce their taxable liability by a 1-to-5. And the same thing goes with charitable donations. Most people think like, oh, if you donate, tithe or donations, you get a 1-to-1. But there's some strategies out there that take that charitable donation on a 1-to-5. So anyways, the bottom line is that there's a lot of strategies, also including cash value life insurance, that a lot of these wealthy individuals and family offices use to be able to grow their portfolio, protect it, and be able to utilize it to continuously acquire more assets and be essentially shielded from any sort of liability or any risk in the market. And again, those three things that I mentioned, private equity, M&A, tax planning, and cash value life insurance, are basically the lifeblood of what Sovereign Assets is and does for a lot of our clients.
Awesome. So how did you get started? Because put it that way, most advisors, they kind of go and start selling final expense, for an example, and they're stuck there for years.
Yeah.
Right. Sounds like you have gone way beyond that. Maybe that's where you started, but
Yeah.
you're way beyond that. So how did it all get started for you to be specifically doing what you're doing right now?
100%. So just like any good story, any good story has to have some sort of like breaking point, right? And some sort of like origin, right? So right out of high school, I went straight into sales. I had to grow up very quickly, with my mom and my dad's divorce. I had to essentially become the man of the house and I had to take care of my family. At 16, I knew I didn't have a chance in school at all. If I wanted to go to college, like I had to basically make a decision. So I decided not to go to school. I decided to go straight into sales. And, at 16, 17, I did a lot of door to door. I did some, uh, phone sales as well too. And I stumbled upon an opportunity to go sell life insurance for this company that all they did was final expense, and it was a captive agency. So they had a
Mm.
specific
Yeah.
product that their marketing was essentially mainly geared with the opportunity to cover final expenses before having to deal with death certificate and all that stuff. So at the time, I really didn't understand much about insurance or financial services or anything like that. All I knew is like, I have the work ethic, I have the tenacity to get something done and get kicked in the teeth and still move forward. So what happened is that for about a year, what I did is I was doing those. Basically, it was almost door to door and phone sales on the final expense side of things. And I became one of the top producers in a very short time, which is kind of how I got the name of Wulf. Wulf is my middle name for those that don't know. My first name is Iliad, like Iliad and the Odyssey. And my middle name Wulf actually started almost like a nickname, because
Mm.
it was it was right around the time in 2016, 2015. It was around the time that the Wolf of Wall Street movies, like the movie, was getting clipped a lot for those motivational videos. So I kind of embodied that person because I wanted that to be my avatar. I wanted the Wolf of Wall Street to be my avatar. At least the good things about that, right? So
Yeah.
after after I became a top producer on one of the like recognition events, I did the chest bump that Matthew McConaughey did, and that's kind of how it stuck. But anyways, that's how I got my bearings with financial services, and I realized very quickly within a year that okay, good opportunity, right industry, wrong company, right?
Yeah.
So from there, I decided I was like, I don't want to be known as the life insurance guy, because I was great at selling it, I was great at building relationships, but again, relationships only take you so far. If the product is not that great, you're going to find something else to replace it with. And that's essentially what was happening. So a lot of the conversations I was having was my clients calling me saying that they want to cancel because they found something cheaper or something better. So I was like, okay, I need a pivot. I don't want to be captive. I don't want to be the guy who only sells Hondas. I want to be able to guy who owns a dealership, who's able to sell Hondas, Fords, Chevys, Ferraris, Maseratis, Lamborghinis, whatever. I wanted to be able to be the big dealership that has access to every piece of inventory that can fit the client's needs. Because now you transition from making your client fit your description to now you finding what the client's need is and trying to find something that can fit their needs. So it becomes high pressure. So it goes from high pressure to more advisor focused. And that's essentially what happened. So I learned very quickly. And then from there, I went to a broker dealer. And what I did is I wanted to get more educated because I didn't want to be known as the life insurance guy. I wanted to eventually build a family office of my own. And we're currently in the process of getting the right licensure to do that. So, but as of right now, we're at least utilizing the same strategies or very similar strategies to family offices. So, to answer your question in a short answer, I was lucky enough to learn very quickly to pivot.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's great. I always love hearing the origin story. It's very similar to me. 30 years ago, I got recruited into the business, didn't know anything about it. All I was selling was disability insurance.
Yeah.
And literally, I drove around the neighborhood looking for contractor vans and talking to contractors. Did that for about a year, right? So very, very similar to you. It was a great service. And what I didn't understand at that point, I'm not going to say that I was great at sales, but literally all we had was a legal size binder where we opened it up, we took our finger and read everything word for word. And at the end, they give us a check. And it was like,
Yeah.
wow, this is insane. So again, it was a system and a process,
Sure.
that really worked. And, then I got my other licenses and investments, eventually got my CFP designation. So I call myself a recovering CFP because I started to realize, and that's why I'm doing this movement. We're doing this podcast, Make Life Less Taxing. It's
Sure.
not about taxes necessarily. Obviously, I work with financial advisors. And then we have the Institute of Untaxable Wealth, and we also have the movement where it's keep what is yours and break free. Break free from the traditional financial system, traditional educational system. We all get stuck in all of these ways of doing things that are no longer working. And I think this is kind of what you're doing with the family offices, going like, hey, you know what? There was this options and ideas that are available to higher net worth individuals, right? some of these things are available to others, but nobody's really talking to them about, right?
That's
So
right.
what would you want your essentially, if you were to describe your mission or your vision of what you're doing right now in one or two sentences, what would that be?
Well, the best way I can put it is protect what matters and preserve what lasts.
Mm,
So what that means to me is, as an individual, as a business owner or family, you want to be able to protect what matters. And what matters to people may be different. But in the core essence is that family legacy, to be able to protect
mm,
your kids, to be able to protect your wife, spouse, the business, So having that protection aspect of it, that layer where something happens, your family's taken care of. And then preserving what lasts. We've heard it before with the Vanderbilts, and we see a great example in the Rockefellers.
mm.
There's a reason why they lasted for so long. So our approach is that we protect what matters for people and we help them preserve what lasts for them.
Yeah, oh, that's great. Well, you talk a lot about maximizing control, not just wealth. What do you mean by that? Can you expand on that a little bit more?
Absolutely. So one of the examples for that is, in my opinion, and I mean both personal and professional, I think cash value life insurance is one of the best tools to maintain control. What I mean by that is, uh, most people have the goal to be able to either buy a house, buy a business, start a business, whatever the case may be, or make a big investment. And a lot of the times, people are going to end up needing to finance things, whether they have to go to a bank or get a lender, etc. And while, albeit that's not wrong, you always obviously want to be able to leverage other people's money. One of the best ways that I've discovered to leverage capital would be to leverage your own capital inside of a cash value life insurance policy. And the reason why is because if you can get to a point where you've built enough cash value, which is possible, to build enough cash value to, for example, I want to buy a couple assisted living facilities. They're great deals right now, and I'm using my life insurance policy to do so. Now, again, most people, they sell the life insurance more so for like high performance, and that's the wrong way to do it. Most people, they look at it from the wrong lens. I look at it from the lens of, I'm going to learn to finance things in a much better way at my terms. Because if I can purchase a business or a cash flowing asset that I control, because I financed it myself and I am the lender on it myself, I can control when to pay myself back. If for some
Mm,
reason there's a low month, high expenses, whatever the case may be, I don't have to worry about the bank calling me and try to furnish my checks or whatever the case may be, because I own the asset. Now, on top of that too, we can take it even a step further. There's a lot of structures with that, which Daniel, I'm sure you probably already know this. There's a lot of structures in the United States through trusts and different business
mm,
structures that not only give you the privacy that you want, but you can also have the structure to where you are the executive trustee, you're the executive controller or the treasurer, where essentially you have the job of control without having to own it. And that gives you a lot more freedom, because lawsuits or audits, things of that nature, they can really ruin somebody's portfolio if it's
yeah,
not structured correctly. So to me, that's what sovereignty, that's what true control feels like, is you're not subject or dependent on banks anymore. You're not one lawsuit away from losing everything. You're not one divorce away from giving up half of everything that you have. That's why sovereign assets, the name of it, is so powerful. And it came to me because of that. It's like you see this all the time with people that have IRAs and 401ks, you know, that they're still dependent on the government,
mm,
they still are essentially at the whim of the market. They still don't own it until they turn 59 and a half. And even then, they still also don't own it, because if they don't start taking RMDs, required minimum distributions,
yeah,
they get taxed 50% by the time they turn 70. Right. So that's not true ownership. True ownership is where you actually have full access, where you have full control of what you can do with that asset without many restrictions, if any. And the same thing goes for the protection side of things, right? You pass away and you have a 401k, that thing's going to probate if you don't have the right
Yeah.
structure. Not only just that, but it's also still subject to taxes. Same thing goes for properties. If you have a bunch of properties in your name, those things are going to probate. It's going to have to go through an estate sale. So that's what true ownership, that's what true control without ownership
Yeah.
means to me and looks like to me.
Yeah. No, you have a great point. I mean, a lot of wealthy people, like billionaires, they literally don't own anything, but they control 100% of everything. And again, they're still the owners of it, but they don't own it in their name. And I think that's the one thing that a lot of people don't understand is that, like you mentioned, you got it in a trust or something, right? You still have the control over it. It just can't be kind of traced to you. And there is a lot of people that are wealthy billionaires that you hear about them. There is a lot more wealthy people that are billionaires and trillionaires nobody knows about because those assets are owned by by entities
Yeah.
that are not them, right?
One of the
So
clear examples of that is like Larry Fink. Larry Fink, who owns BlackRock, is like, technically speaking, like, maybe on paper he's not a trillionaire, but he has access to trillions of dollars
yeah,
because he owns BlackRock, or he controls BlackRock, I should say. And
yeah,
then this too, Daniel. Like, BlackRock owns a bunch of Vanguard, some of it Fidelity and State Street, and they all own each other,
yeah,
like companies and entities. But there's a few people that control the pawns on the board.
yeah. So when you look at the traditional financial system, right? I mean, that's what we kind of keep what is yours, break free. That's the whole idea. Where do you think that it really quietly takes power away from most people? What are the things that are kind of leaking that they're not even aware of it? I think that's the biggest part.
If I had to point it to one thing, is people don't prepare enough for
Yeah,
taxes. So speaking of make life less taxing, um, I believe Americans specifically have been sold a bill of goods that the traditional 401k and IRAs and brokerage accounts is the way to retirement. Now, I want to be very clear. I'm not here to talk down on them. I'm here mainly just to expose some facts and some truths about it, that it is important to be able to have a diversified portfolio. Again, we have actually one of our senior partners. He is an advisor, and he is the guy who also manages or the security side of our business, right?
yeah,
So he handles all of our AUM business, right? His name is Andrew. He handles AUM and M&A. But one of the things that's very important to understand is that people who are traditionally invested in 401ks, IRAs, and brokerage accounts, they're not preparing for taxes, or at least not as well as they should, because most people have the approach of like, well, let me go ahead and listen to Dave Ramsey and Ken Fisher and Suze Orman because they tell me to max fund my IRA and my 401k, my SEP, my brokerage account, because the market is going to average over time like 10%. And albeit, if you look at it historically speaking, yes, that may be true, when you look at it over a span of like 90 years. But when you actually zoom in a little bit closer to what it's more realistic, which is usually a 30-year span of an investor's lifetime, most of the time, there's a couple of issues that you find there, is that fees eat up a big chunk
yeah,
of those portfolios, of those accounts, IRAs, 401ks, and brokerage accounts, which again, you can still try to mitigate them as much as possible. And then there's also the sequence of returns risk, right? Because even if the average return is 8%, it matters when you start taking that money out,
yeah,
because all it takes is like a couple of bad years in the negative to essentially really deplete your nest egg. Even if the average return is still 8%, when you start taking that money matters the most. And I think that's what people are not looking at the math. But again, the number one thing is taxes. Let's just say fees are the lowest. Okay. Um, Sequence of returns at this point doesn't matter because we start taking out income during the positive years. What about taxes? People right now, they're expecting, or maybe they're not even thinking about this, that taxes may go up in the future. There's always a give or take on those
yeah,
levers. When we're at a historically low tax environment and we're spending the most in foreign aid, maybe military spending or whatever the case may be, the other lever of taxes is going to have to go up at some point. And maybe the people who are in their 60s now, they're not going to really suffer from it, right? Because taxes may expect to go up by 2033, according to David Walker, who was the comptroller of the US in 2008, because of the big, beautiful bill, not trying to be political, but
Yeah.
what's happening now is that if people are now planning for the future of taxes, what happens when you have 2-3 million bucks in your 401k? Now cost of living is much, much higher. And all of your assets are in qualified funds that are also invested 100% in the market. Now you've taken 100% liability and essentially 100% taxable. So the approach that most people should take is like, yes, invest in the market, have some money in managed funds. However,
Yeah.
plan for taxes. That's why I like cash value life insurance. And I know sometimes people might look at it as like, oh, you can't. Life insurance is not an investment, and I agree with that. It's not. However, it can be a fantastic cash accumulation tool. And as you probably know this, Daniel, under tax code 7702, you can grow money in there tax-free.
Yeah.
And what it can help is when that sequence of returns risk happens, because it will be eventually at some point, there will be a year which it will be negative. Instead of borrowing or like taking money from your brokerage account or 401k, you have something to fall back on that's tax-free, that has no market volatility in it, that can help supplement that retirement. So to give you a more concise answer, taxes. People don't prepare for taxes, and that's the number one mistake people make. They try to prepare for taxes when it's already too late.
Yeah. No, that's what the Institute of Untaxable Wealth and Make Life Less Taxing is all about. So, no, I agree with you 100%. Now, you work with a lot of business owners. Can you walk us through typically when they come to you, what are they dealing with, before they find you? Like, what are the biggest challenges that they specifically have?
Great question. So we've identified a few things. Number one, we've identified income being a little inconsistent. So what I mean by that is, for example, we help a lot of attorneys, doctors, and personal injury providers. And to give you an example for them, their cash flow is inconsistent or unpredictable, I should say, because it is all based on cases, like car
Mhm.
accident cases. Sometimes high season, will bring them a lot of car accidents, and sometimes low season will bring them less. So that right there, the number one issue is that income is unpredictable. But the same thing goes for any business, right? Regardless of where you're at. If, for example, pest control and these door-to-door type of businesses, they're much, much heavier in the summer, and their cash flow is predictable during the summer. But what about the rest of the year? That's unpredictable. And the same thing goes for any sort of business. Any business has cycles. Even the recession-proof businesses, those still do have cycles, right? So for us, is identifying that as like the number one issue people encounter is inconsistent or unpredictable income or cash flow.
Yeah.
Number two, with higher income or higher cash flow with successful businesses, regardless of seasons, taxes are a huge issue as well. Because if you have a very profitable business and you have corporate taxes, you have your personal pass-through taxes, etc., maybe you have some capital gains tax. How do we eliminate that? What's most people's advice? What's most CPA's advice? Spend it, right? Buy this, buy that, write this off, write this, that. But now we've essentially encountered to like third issues like liquidity, right? It becomes to a point where either they're heavily asset rich, which now they need to figure out how to protect that asset, or they're just illiquid. All of their money's tied up. So either way, it becomes one of those scenarios that it's kind of like, it's like a up and down. It's like
Yeah.
income goes high because they have a good season. Now season kind of goes low, but now they still have to worry about taxes, right? So that's a huge problem. And then, okay, taxes are taken care of because now they spent it, they bought all these assets. Okay, great. But now they have these issues like, well, I'm not liquid enough. Like I can't liquidate. I can't pay my rent or I can pay my expenses with an asset. It's not liquid enough, right? And on top of that too, is like, what happens if I get into a lawsuit, audit, or a divorce? Now that becomes an issue too, because like that asset can be taken away from me. So those are the three things that people essentially, those are the three main issues that people encounter before they meet us. And after they sit down with us, we actually come up with a very strategic plan. That's why our process is a lot slower. than most other people out there. Most financial advisors, insurance agents, or wealth planners, they do a needs analysis. Boom, boom, boom. Here, let's roll over money like this. We'll handle it. Cool.
No.
That doesn't do anything because it doesn't really educate the client. It doesn't really solve, maybe it doesn't solve a lot of the issues that they have. That's why for us, we really sit down with our client. We meet with our client like 2 to 3 times before we actually onboard them, because not everybody's going to be a good fit.
No.
And we need to understand where the client is going and where they're at right now to make sure that we actually have a path ahead. So if I'm the captain of a boat and you get on my boat and you're like, just go, I'll be like, no, where are we going? It's like, if you don't have any direction of where you want to go, it's like, we're
No.
just wasting time. We're wasting time, resources, and energy. I'm not moving this boat. So we have to know the plan moving forward. We have to know exactly where we're heading with the steps. If we need to do island hopping and we need to make a few steps, we need to know which those steps are. And that's what we do, Daniel. We set up an actual pathway ahead that plans for the next 15 years for every client.
No. So what's kind of the biggest blind spots that you kind of see where actually most successful people, right? Are basically they have, and they don't realize that they're kind of stuck in that. Because I think, when you look at the whole business, financial business, you can look at people, that are not doing that well, that are kind of living the paycheck to paycheck,
Yeah,
and then you got individuals that are actually making a lot of money. But when we start talking about the financial literacy or the blind spots they have, they're not that different. I mean, they're different because they're in different places, but it's not the money that you make, it's
correct.
what actually happens with that money, right? So what are
Yeah,
some of those blind spots?
and it's what you keep too, right? So the number one problem
No.
number one blind spot is that a lot of the times, for example, businesses, and maybe you've experienced this, a lot of the businesses, they make money fast, or maybe they don't, but whatever, they have a lot of cash flow coming in. And then at the end of the year, they get hit with a tax bill, and
Yeah.
if they spent everything with like lifestyle, the cars, the watches, the trips, all that stuff, where are they going to get the money from? Right? How are they going to pay those taxes? Not only just that, but they plan for the taxes when it's already too late. I've had a couple instances where I've had some people hit us up and contact us and say like, hey, we have some tax planning that we need to get done. I'm like, okay, you do realize it's December 23rd, right?
Yeah.
It's like, like, listen, we're really good at what we do, but we're not Jesus. We're not financial Jesus in this, right? So
Yeah.
the number one blind spot is like people procrastinate all the time. And the same thing goes for some of the strategies that we utilize, right? Like to give you an example, on the on the cash value life insurance, most people they're like, oh, I want to wait until I have like 100 grand or I have $1 million ready to deploy to that. It's like, hey, that's fantastic, great goal. However, like Kevin O'Leary said, making $1 million is nearly impossible until you make it, right? But what
Yeah.
that means is that most people will not be able to get to $1 million cash. You know this, Daniel, right? Like if you have
Yeah.
$100 in your wallet, what happens? You end up
Burns a
spending,
hole in the pocket.
right? And on the
Yeah.
side, it's like if you break that $100 because for some reason at that moment you're like, well, I'm just gonna use my bill because I don't want to use my card or whatever the case may be. That money's gone within the next couple of days. The moment you break 100, it's gone. Same thing goes for financial like savings, right? Unless you're
Yep.
making a ton of money really fast, which now you have a tax problem and you have essentially another blind spot of like, well, I got all this money, I have no idea what to do with it, and now you become reckless.
Yeah.
And that's when I've seen a lot of people put money into really bad deals and they lose a lot, right? So blind spots is mainly comes with planning and not procrastinating, on
Yeah.
the cash for life insurance. If you want to utilize infinite banking, do not wait until you've saved up 100,000, right? You can essentially start saving whatever you're making right now, 10 to 15% of it. You put it into a policy, you kind of set it and forget it. And at the same time, you keep operating your business.
Yeah.
Don't wait. The same thing goes for tax planning. Don't wait until December 15th or November 10th, to actually get some tax planning done. When it comes to also acquiring assets and, buying a business or whatever, most people kind of want to like, they want to have the perfect deal. They want to be able to have the perfect structure or they want to do seller financing and all that stuff. At some point you have to realize it's like, not every deal is built equally. And sometimes you have to strike while the iron's hot.
No.
Otherwise somebody else comes in and takes that from you, So
Yeah.
I would say the number one blind spot is that procrastination. They don't
Yeah.
take action. Now, obviously, I'm not saying people, they should rush, but they should take a calculated risk and actually move forward.
Yeah. Slow is smooth and smooth is fast. And I think
Right.
that's really what it comes down to, is just making those decisions and informed decisions. And I think this is where the challenge is with a lot of people. They're making decisions that may seem right, but sometimes they're not informed because they don't see the whole picture. And again, if you don't slow down, you don't see that whole picture. Now, you've built sovereign assets around the idea of being a partner and a lasting financial freedom. Can you expand on that?
Yeah. So for us, we kind of want to operate as almost like a fractional CFO, right?
Mm,
In other words, it's like most people hire financial advisors, they hire CPAs, all that stuff to just do a job. How I started my business and how I started in this journey is like I wanted to break the stigma of people thinking, well, financial advisors are A, greedy and money hungry, and then
mm,
two, they're very cut and dry. They're not my friend. I'm just paying them to do a job. I wanted to break those two
oh,
things. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to be looked at essentially as as a financial planner, financial advisor that you would invite to Thanksgiving. You know, what better relationship with your money guy than to feel comfortable enough to invite them to Thanksgiving?
mm,
Okay,
yeah.
number one is that. But number two, when it comes to becoming a partner, right, is if someone is as invested as you into your success like a partner would be, you know that business is going to succeed, or you know that plan is going to succeed because, again, I'm betting on it myself. So what I mean by that is not only we treat everybody as like almost like partners of sovereign assets, and we essentially have this very inclusive community where we have a very open door policy. Every client has my direct contact.
Mm,
That's why we're not a gigantic mega corporation with like millions of clients because it dilutes the quality.
yeah.
That's why we don't have 100 different agents and advisors because it dilutes the quality. So to us, not only we want to be able to have the people feel comfortable reaching out to me directly, but we also want to co-invest with them. A lot of the private equity opportunities, a lot of the M&A deals that we do, we bring it up to our base. We bring it up to our clients first because we want to be able to co-invest with them. Because if
Yeah.
we co-invest with them, we've already established that trust, number one, but we already are fully invested into this. Not only just that, but any opportunities that we bring to them,
Yeah.
it's the same thing that we're doing ourselves. I'm the guy who's invested uh, into private equity and M&A. I'm the guy who's bought a bunch of life insurance policies. I'm the guy who's implementing these tax strategies myself. We
Yeah.
do everything first and we lead from the front. So that's what, to me, that's what being a partner really means, or that approach of partnership really means. And on top of that too, on the business to business side, we want to be able to elevate together. When it comes to other businesses and having referral relationships, it has to be mutual. But not only that, but it's like we want to see other people win too.
Yeah.
So a rising tide lifts all boats, and collaboration over competition. Because there may be some things myself and our team that we can do that somebody like you can do, and vice versa. There are things that you can't do that maybe we can do. And at the end of the day, if we come together in a partnership or strategic partnership, we can do much better together
Yeah.
than separately.
No, you bring a great point, and again, it's all about just having a full understanding of what's happening now. As you work with people, can you walk us through a moment that you had with a client where things really shifted for them from where they were, maybe financially, maybe even kind of mentally,
Yeah,
and or the way that they really looked at their money, and there was a real kind of a transformation, right? Because you have become that partner that's partnering with them as opposed to being somebody that's just selling them products, right?
absolutely. So I think one of the clear examples with that was, and I have a few of them, but I'll give you a couple. So one of them was a real estate developer, who essentially the reason why she came to me was in a way her biggest concern was like, how can I maximize what I'm doing? It's like she felt like she was kind of stuck in a position where like she didn't she kind of was hitting a plateau, and she wanted to figure out a way to leverage her money better, to be able to acquire more properties, to be able to become a much more efficient investor. And what we did for her is that we essentially set up a plan where, number one, we wanted to reallocate some of that capital because wherever it was sitting at, it was just not growing as much as she wanted it. So we reallocated some of that capital into a properly structured policy that gave her a lot of liquidity. And then from there, when the opportunity came that she could essentially pounce on a couple deals that were basically too good to pass on, she needed access to her capital in a very short time frame. And instead of her liquidating the cash that she had or trying to go chase a lender, it was a very simple process. She borrowed from her policy, money got wired to her account within a couple of days, and then she was able to move forward on that deal. And what that allowed her to do is, like, it allowed her to still keep that money compounded because she essentially financed the deal herself without having to utilize actually her cash. She just utilized the equity of the policy while the policy is still growing. Not only that, but we also deal with a lot of attorneys and doctors. And there's an example of somebody who had a very hefty tax bill, like high six figures, and they were trying to figure out a way to essentially, like, not be in that same position. And essentially, a lot of the stuff that we ended up doing is, once we got them plugged into our tax ecosystem and our tax team, that we were able to implement certain strategies that not only it eliminated pretty much like 80% of that tax bill, 80 to 90% of that tax bill, but it allowed them to actually keep about a few extra $100,000 in cash that's essentially like tax exempt at that point. So it allowed him to essentially have a little bit more breathing room for his firm that he could essentially reinvest, and he could essentially grow much further than what he did. And we also do it too in a lot of the day-to-day clients that we do have. I have another client who was an influencer. I won't share the name, who essentially had to make a move outside of the country because he just wanted to change his environment. And at the time, obviously moving from one country to another, you can understand that it's expensive, right? It costs logistically a lot. And anyways, what we ended up doing is he ended up actually using the policy as well to be able to give him that floating time that he needed to be able to move around. And on top of that too, he was able to utilize some of his cash to be able to invest into a private equity deal that to this day still pays him dividends every single quarter, like on autopilot. And just like that, we have many others too that have invested, hundreds of thousands and if not millions into some of our much lower barrier of entry private equity opportunities that pay them yield every single month and every single quarter. And that allows people the breathing room and the predictability. So we have cases like that all the time, and we would be here for like a couple of hours if we went through every single one of them. But we're very transparent. We're very transparent with everything that we do, and in our events, we showcase things like that.
Yeah. No, those are great stories. Now, what do you believe that clients truly want deep down, but maybe they don't even know how to ask for it? Because I think most people don't even know. They know they've got financial challenges and things, and I believe it's up to someone like yourself that can help them to show them things that they don't see because they're not on the surface, right? So they kind of have to go in deep, dig down. But what do you believe that your clients truly want?
Honestly speaking, Daniel, I think clients just want honesty. They want honesty and integrity because, like, to be very fair with you, in our industry, there's a lot of scumbags that just take advantage of people. There's a lot of fly-by-night deals, like, oh, invest into this, invest into that, and then you lose your money. So clients, what they truly want is to be able to trust someone. They want to be able to find someone who's legitimate, who they can trust, that knows that they're not going to screw them over. And then when they need access to that money, that they're going to be there for them. That not only just that, but they're going to put them in a better position.
Oh.
So to answer your question is, like, they want a trustworthy, honest person. Because I'll be very transparent with you. There's some times, like, I'm not perfect at everything, But if I ever mess up, if I ever make a mistake, I think what a client would appreciate is the accountability and the integrity to want to fix that. It takes a lot, and that's why a lot of the times you see if a financial advisor or somebody in finance, an investor, whatever, if they made a mistake and they made the wrong investment, what happens? They just disappear. They don't take any accountability. They leave. And I think, and I'm very lucky, knock on wood, that I've never been in a position where any of our clients have lost money like that, and or we've made a mistake. So, but I'm saying if it ever did happen, like, I'm not afraid to face the music. And I think that's what most
Yeah.
clients want. They want honesty and integrity to do the right thing.
Yeah. No, you bring great points. So what's next for you? Is there a project or something that you're working on?
So yeah, right now we got to a really good spot in the business. So we're going to continue the events. So what's next for us is we want to essentially put a workshop a month, one workshop per month, if that's possible, if the schedule does allow it. But also, what we're really striving for right now is we want to be able to put together almost like a deal shop or like a deal box, right?
Mm,
So when we have our clients that are in positions to essentially invest, or they got to a position where they have the disposable income and then now they want to kind of venture out there, that we actually have them almost like a platform that they can kind of pick and choose whichever deal they want to get into. Like, for example, we're heavily involved right now with assisted living facilities.
mm,
you know we're also heavily involved in smaller businesses, like, for example, landscaping, plumbing, electrician companies like that. And we want to be able to give people the opportunity to invest into that. The same thing goes with like short-term private equity yield machines, right? For example, if somebody has like some idle cash that they want to invest in, that they can essentially be like, hey, I got this money, I want to put it to work, like I want to get some yield out of it, even if it's short term, right? So the project for that, for us next, is essentially to tighten and smooth out the transitioning period, so that way it
mm.
becomes not automated, but it becomes a very easy transition. So that way, because again, if the more money our clients make, the more money we can all make together, and
Yeah.
the much bigger impact we can have in the world.
Yeah. It's all about building systems. And I think that's what you're mentioning, right? Like often I tell the advisors that I work with and what I'm trying to do in my business, I'm trying to create freedoms in the four areas. I want to do the work that I love and enjoy. I want to do it with people that I love and enjoy working with. And I want to
Nice.
do it whenever I want and wherever I want, right?
Yes, sir.
And the only way you can get there is when you have systems, right?
Yes.
Systems and processes that actually help you to get to there. So
100%.
that's great. Listen, as we're coming to the end of the podcast here, I've got four. I call them rapid fire questions. Just like one answer is usually more than enough. Is
Okay.
there a, favorite book that really shaped your thinking?
Um, oh man, so many. I'm gonna go ahead and say, what would the Rockefellers do?
That's a great book. Is there a morning habit that you can't live without?
Prayer.
A bucket list that you haven't checked off yet?
Bucket list I haven't checked off yet. Ooh, Monaco F1.
Mm.
Yeah,
Oh, you're an F1. Oh man,
absolutely,
I'm
especially in Monaco. Like
well,
that's bucket list for sure.
oh, that's awesome. It looks like it's going to be an interesting season
Yeah,
this
yes,
year with all of the changes and everything.
yes.
Just out of curiosity, who's your favorite driver?
Oh, driver. I have to go with Fernando Alonso,
Yeah, yeah,
and it's because I'm from Spain, and I grew up watching him race when he was at Renault.
yeah,
And even though he's not a great driver anymore, or he's obviously because he's with age, you're not
yeah,
you don't become as sharp. But Fernando Alonso is my favorite for sure.
yeah. I think if it was in the right car, I think he could still be right there at the
Yes,
top.
I
We're just,
agree. I
yeah.
agree. I agree.
I feel that there were some decisions that he made that maybe were not the best, or it was more or less bad luck because
Yeah.
I mean he was in McLaren and put a lot of time and effort, but he
Yeah.
was like 5 years a little too early.
Yes.
You know?
Yes. I agree.
So,
100%.
yeah, no, that's great. Is there a surprising hobby or interest that really recharges you?
I don't think it's surprising, but jujitsu. I absolutely love jujitsu. It recharges me every time, even though it's extremely exhausting. But I freaking love the mats. I love, I love jujitsu.
Yeah.
100%.
Awesome. Well, I've got one last question. I call it the hot one. Fast forward to the end of your life and imagine that everyone forgot everything you ever taught them or showed them, but they do remember this one last message from you. What would you want that message to be?
If it's the last thing, um, my last message would be Christ is the only way to true peace.
Hmm.
100%.
I don't know what you were going to say, but somehow I knew that you were going to say that.
Really?
I was almost going like this with my finger, and I'm like, wow. So I think this is we're walking on a bit of a holy ground, I guess, you and I
I love
right
it.
now. So no, that's awesome.
Love
Yeah,
it.
100% agree with you that there's only one way, and he's it. Wow, Wolf, thank you so much for sharing your journey. Uh, where can people find out more about you and the work that you do?
Yeah, first and foremost, Daniel, thank you so much for being a fantastic host. I've really enjoyed our conversation, and I'm very grateful. Where people can find me next, Instagram is probably the best and easiest way to do it. I run both my pages, my Sovereign Assets AZ page, and Wulf Trigo, just like my name, WULF TRIGO. It's a verified account, so it should be pretty easy to be able to pop up and find me. I respond to all my DMs and I respond to basically everything. So that's me running that page. Other than that, I am also on YouTube and TikTok and Facebook, all that stuff. But Instagram is probably the easiest way to get a hold of
Yeah.
me.
Perfect. So if you're listening, make sure that you check out the Wolf's Instagram and all of his assets. We're going to have the links in the show notes so you can go in there. Wolf, thank you again for your time and your message. And remember, making life less taxing isn't just about money, it's about freedom, clarity, and purpose. Keep building your wealth, keep protecting your legacy, and keep living the untaxable lifestyle. We'll see you next time on the Make Life Less Taxing podcast. Thank you again, Wolf.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Make Life Less Taxing podcast. Be sure to check out our other top advisor interviews at makelifilesstaxingpodcast.com.